That's awesome. Marriage is fun. I like being married. I love my wife. I like helping couples through the premarital counseling phase. I like officiating at wedding ceremonies. I love marriage. I love marriage. But if I'm being honest, it's one of the most difficult relationships ever. Some of you are waiting to see if your spouse was going to amen that first. Marriage is tough. You know, we've been in this series. This is now week 3 of This Is Us, and we've talked about friendships. We've talked about relationships in general. And today, I'm going to narrow our focus in on marriage. And, let me just say up front a couple of things. First of all, if there are young ears in the room today, at some point in this message, I'm going to talk about something that you may not want young ears to hear about, because I'm going to talk about marriage. If you don't know what I mean by that, ask your neighbor. And so maybe there's nobody that fits that criteria, but if you want to maybe take them to children's church or something like that, now would be a good time to do that. I don't want any angry emails after the message. So there's your warning. Here's the second thing. You know, if you're single here, I just want to say up front, this message is not meant to exclude you in any way. Please don't feel like, man, I'm actually going to get up and leave now, because I believe that this message has elements to it that will benefit every relationship in your life. But also, I just want you to I heard one speaker say it this way: to be a great backup singer for the duets in your life. So if you're single, and that applies to everybody, but especially if you're single, if you can take notes of some of these things, and you can help the married people that are around you by encouraging them, by letting them know some of these things, that's a great way to be a great backup singer to the duets in your life. So that's just a couple things. I just want to make sure that you're aware of those things before we dive in to this topic called marriage. And so, if you're married in the room, raise your hand. It's a few of you. Okay, I'm glad to see we have a few married people here today. If it would have only been 3 people, well, that would have been weird. But also, I would have probably switched messages. So, no good marriage, listen to this, no good marriage is an accident. There are no accidental good marriages. No good marriage happens just because a couple was lucky. Good marriages don't just fall out of the sky. Even the marriage that you look at today and you say, man, I wish our marriage was like their marriage. It didn't happen just by chance. Every good marriage takes 2 things. And it's the big idea for my message today. Every good marriage takes hard work, and it takes intentionality. Marriage is a great thing. In fact, I think marriage gives us some great insight into who Jesus is. But marriage is hard. And to have a successful marriage, we've got to be willing to put in the hard work. And what happens far too often, maybe you've seen it in your own life, I bet you've definitely seen it in the lives of couples around you, is we go into marriage with this ideal that it's going to be easy. It's going to be great. I can put it on cruise control. Once we say I do, then that's when the real fun starts. But if you've been married longer than a week, you know that's not the case. It takes hard work, and it takes intentionality. In other words, if you are not constantly investing in your marriage, it will go bad. And that's true of a lot of relationships. If you don't spend time together, it'll go bad. If you're not doing some of the things we're going to talk about today, it will go bad. And so what I want to encourage you all up front to commit to right now is commit to hard work and commit to intentionality. Are you with me?
Yes.
Can you do that?
Yes.
Because listen, I've said it before, that strong churches are often a product of strong marriages in the church. And so if we can commit to have strong marriages, if we can commit to put these things into practice, I guarantee that the Journey Church has a bright future ahead of it. And so if we'll commit to that, I think that we'll go a long way. Hebrews chapter 13, verse 4, it says it this way. It says, marriage should be honored by all, and the marriage bed kept pure. Honored by all. we don't really honor marriage anymore, do we? I mean, our society certainly doesn't honor marriage. And if we are being honest, we don't do a great job at honoring marriage. We don't do it well. We often, especially as Christians, we live in one of two ways when it comes to marriage. We either live in a posture that views marriage as temporary. In other words, if it doesn't go the way I think it should, if my spouse isn't making me happy, if I don't feel fulfilled, if I wake up one morning and I don't feel that love and feeling, then I can just move away. We can divorce, and I can move on to another relationship. Or I can stay single for the rest of my days. It was true for me. And I would imagine it may have been true for many of you here today. That you entered marriage with a plan B. That you said, I'm going to give this a shot. This is what people do. I'm in my 20s. I've got a career. I really want to have kids one day, and so I'm going to get married. And I found this person that I love, and so we're going to give it a shot. But if it doesn't work, I've got a way out. It's okay. And so we view it one way with a posture of being temporary. The second is that we treat our marriages like it's the last priority on the list. We put everything else ahead of our marriages. We put our jobs ahead of our marriage. We put our kids ahead of our marriage. And listen, that's not the way it's supposed to be. We're going to talk about that next week. Next week, we're going to have kids in here with us. I'm going to talk about parenting and submitting to authority and all of that kind of fun stuff. But one of the things we're going to talk about is this idea that has crept into our society, and we see it all the time, that our kids become more important than our marriages. It's not supposed to be that way. We put our families ahead of our marriage. When you get married, you're supposed to leave and cleave. When you get married, you're supposed to leave your family and then attach yourself to the one. What happens is we get married, but we still leave an attachment back here to mom and dad or to our family, and it ends up pulling us away from our spouse anytime things get tough. We put friends above our marriages. We put hobbies above our marriages. And so I would guess that most of us here today fit in one of those two categories. Either marriage is temporary or marriage is just not a priority. And listen, you can tell me all day long that marriage is a priority for you, but show me your schedule book. Show me where you're spending your time, and that will tell me what your priorities really are. The good news is that 87% of young adults plan on getting married. I think that's a great number. That's a positive number. And 82% of those say it's going to be for life. I think that's great. That's something worth celebrating. Because marriage is meant to be for life. And nobody starts out marriage with the expectation that it's going to fail. Don't we all start out marriage thinking it's going to be for life? But then life happens. And it is an epidemic in our culture today. So how is it that we fully commit to the idea of till death do us part? How do we do it? Well, today I want to submit to you 6 ingredients. 6 things that I found in my marriage. And listen, I am far from perfect. I've got a lot of work to do. But these are 6 things that I found that help to make a marriage strong and lasting. And so here's the first. Hopefully you have your outline. You can follow along. Fill it in there. The first is this. It's acceptance. The first is acceptance. Romans 15:7 says, accept one another, then just as Christ accepted you in order to bring praise to God. We are to accept the other. We are to accept our spouse just as they are. Listen up. Hear this. We are to accept our spouse just as they are, not as we hope they will be someday. We are to accept them as they are. And here's the truth. 70% of people marry somebody that is their personality opposite. Doesn't surprise you probably to hear that stat. I lean more towards the introvert side of things. My wife, an extrovert. We married opposites. And it's not surprising. In your marriage, I would imagine that there's some opposite tendencies for most of you. And what we've learned in marriage is that our oppositeness, not only does it cause a strong attraction between us, but it can also drive us crazy. The opposite tendencies that we fall in love with, that we're drawn to, can be the very thing that brings divisiveness into our marriage and can just be destructive over the long haul. I heard it put this way, that before marriage, opposites attract. After marriage, opposites attack. Maybe that's true for you. But we should accept our spouse. And a lot of people believe very wrong things going into marriage. I mean, women. Can I talk to the women for a minute? Is that okay? I know I'm not a woman, but let me speak into your life for just a second, if you will. Women tend to think, well, I can change him over time. He's just got a few rough edges. We'll knock those off of him. Women tend to think they'll change their spouse. Some women even, they get feedback from their friends or from their family, and their friends and family will say, well, hey, I'm concerned about the way he treats you. I'm concerned about the way he speaks to you. And the women rationalize it. They say, no, you're just catching him on a bad day. The truth is that they're probably seeing him as he really is. Because as he is today is probably how he will be in the future. It's foolish to say you're going to change him. And if you enter into marriage, or if you spend one day in marriage thinking you're going to change your husband, ladies, you're going to be sadly disappointed. Men, I've got something for you too. Men enter marriage thinking, oh, she'll never change. I know what her mother's like, but I won't allow that to happen. I love my mother-in-law. I'm so glad that my wife is so much like her. So they're here today. Can you give them a round of applause for being here? Yeah. But men enter marriage thinking, she'll never change. Or somehow I'll keep her from changing. I'll make sure she goes to the gym. It's foolish to think that your wife will never change, guys. And the truth is that change, no matter how positive it is, true change, lasting change, can only come into your marriage through the work of God. And so, ladies, if you need your guy to change, guys, if you need your wives to change, your nagging is not going to do it. Your criticisms are not going to do it. Your disrespect will not change your spouse. Only God will do that. Because the truth about acceptance is that acceptance in marriage, it brings stability. When you accept your wife for who they are, it brings this level of stability into your marriage. That each other knows exactly what to expect, and no matter what happens in the life of each individual person or together, that things are going to be okay. That stability is important to marriage. And can I just say on this topic of acceptance, one final thing. The world is mean enough. The world is mean enough. We shouldn't have to feel not accepted at home too. The world will criticize us. The world will nag us. The world will tell us we're not enough. The world will tell us that we're not accepted. We don't need to have those feelings at home too. And so if for no other reason should you accept your spouse for who they are, accept them for that purpose. That I guarantee that every time we walk into the workplace or the grocery store or we hang out with friends, there are feelings of inadequacy and lack of acceptance that come. We shouldn't have to feel those things at home too. If anything, it should be the opposite, and we'll talk about that in a minute. So acceptance, that's the first thing. Here's number 2. The second one is attention. Attention. 1 Peter 1:22. Now that you have purified yourselves by obeying the truth, so that you have sincere love for each other, love one another deeply from the heart. Give them attention. Give them love. Give them your time. If you love someone, You know what's going on in their life, and you care. Do you remember when you were dating? Do you remember that far back? When you were dating? Do you remember how narrowly focused you were on the other person? Do you remember how all you thought about was them? That you spent your days and your nights thinking about and talking to them and spending time with them? You had nicknames for each other? Do you remember those days? For me and Consuela, our favorite nickname was Babe. I love you, babe. Hey, babe. You're so beautiful, babe. It became our pet name. Maybe you had some of those like Kitten or Stud. I don't know what those were for you, but what's happened over time is those cute nicknames end up only being used when we're annoyed with one another. Babe? Why didn't you take the trash out, babe? It's almost become a cuss word in our house. Do you remember those days? Those days of dating? When you would drop everything just to get together with her. It wouldn't matter what time you got off work. You would find the energy to go spend time with him. You would give each other your undivided attention in those days. If you needed to run an errand, it was better if you could do it together. You would stay on the phone talking all night long. But now, if you get off work late, the last thing you want to do is being bothered by somebody else wanting to spend time with you. If you need to run an errand, it's like a vacation if you can go do it by yourself. And talking on the phone, man, if his name pops up on caller ID, instead of being excited, you're struck with fear. And you're like, oh man, what could he want now? You laugh because it's true. Ladies, do you remember how much you used to obsess about what you'd wear on the date? How you'd call up your friends or maybe even bring them over and let them help you pick out just the right outfit for him? You would probably change about 32 times before you found the exact right outfit for your date. And guys, it wasn't so much about what we would wear, was it? It was about the cologne. Wasn't it, guys? It was about the cologne. How many of you bought cologne just because you had a date coming up? Yeah. Just go out and buy new cologne. For me, maybe you can think about what your favorite was back then. Maybe it's still a favorite for you. For me, I remember I started out with Tommy. You guys remember Tommy? Is it still around? I don't even know. It might still be around. But I started out with Tommy. But then I moved on. And I moved on to colognes like Pleasure and Obsession and Eternity, because that describes our love. You know what cologne I wear today? Happy. Maybe it's from a place of longing. I don't know. When's the last time, ladies, that you obsessed about what you're going to wear for the date? Men, when's the last time that you worked hard to find exactly that right cologne so you can wow your wife? Let me back up. When's the last time you had a date? When's the last time you had something special to dress up for and to spray on that extra squirt of spray? Here's the truth. The opposite of love, it's not hate. It's apathy. It's when you stop caring. It's when you don't find yourself interested in the other. It's when you find yourself not giving attention to your wife or your husband. It's when you're so caught up in your needs, when you're so caught up in yourself and what's happening in your world, and you just end up not caring about the other. It's not hate. But listen, love pays attention to the other person. Love pays attention. How are you doing on paying attention? Here's the third. The third one is this, it's adjustment. Adjustment. Ephesians puts it best. Submit to one another out of reverence for Christ. Submit to one another out of reverence for Christ. One survey tells us that most marriages fail because of immaturity and selfishness. There's been this word creep up that people would use instead of those two words. They would call it incompatibility. What does that mean exactly? What does it mean to be incompatible? I mean, isn't that just the word we use when we want out? We're just not compatible. Listen, you're not incompatible. Something brought you together. Something caused that spark. Could it not be that it's not incompatibility, but rather it's immaturity and selfishness? Because this idea of adjustment, it is needed all the time in marriage. It's needed all the time in all relationships. Adjusting how you act, adjusting how you speak, adjusting how you listen or don't listen, adjusting how you prioritize the things of life. You've got to adjust. Adjustment leads to success in marriage. Often, adjustment is required on a daily basis. Can I get a witness from somebody? Sometimes you've got to adjust every single day. Adjust the way that you want to do things, or adjust the way that you prefer things to be done. But marriage calls us to different. Romans 14:19, let us therefore make every effort to do what leads to peace and to mutual edification. And can I just say that it is not usually one big thing that ruins marriage. It's usually not the one big thing. I mean, of course it can happen. Infidelity can happen, abuse happens, and that can ruin marriage in a moment. But can I submit to you this morning that it's actually not one big thing that usually ends marriages? Usually what it is a lot of small things. Certainly infidelity can be a result of that. But it is a series of small things that happen over time. Song of Songs, if you've not read this book, read it. Not to your children, but read it to yourself. Song of Songs, chapter 2, verse 15. Catch for us the foxes, the little foxes that ruin the vineyards, our vineyards that are in bloom. The Song of Songs, it's written about love. It's written about marriage. And here we see this analogy of a fox, a small fox coming into the vineyard and ruining something that is in full bloom. And when your marriage is in full bloom, I can guarantee you there will be small foxes that will come along and try to ruin what you've built up. Because the small foxes over time lead to the big fox that will ruin your marriage. In other words, holding on to the offense, holding on to the anger, holding on to the entitlement that you feel. And when you don't adjust in those moments, when you fail to make the adjustment, when those small foxes come in, when you didn't help with the household chores like you've been asked to do 100 times, when you didn't speak to him in a way that was respectful and encouraging and rather you just nagged, when you didn't honor her when you were talking about her in front of your friends, the little foxes that build up over time, you felt them. You can identify them in your own life. Those unresolved issues that you have, those conflicts that were never fully resolved, and so you've hung on to them. And every time you have another conflict, that memory, that moment comes up, and it only fuels the next argument. Listen, God, He takes the two and makes them one. But the enemy takes the one and wants to make them two. So where is it in your marriage today where you find that you are no longer one? Where you find yourself being two? And the enemy, listen, he makes the one two one little offense at a time. One little wrong at a time. One little conflict at a time. So where is that in your life and in your marriage? What's that thing that you've never quite gotten over? What's that thing that you need to resolve right away before it gets bigger and becomes uncontrollable? Here's the next one. It kind of goes together with that last one. It's amnesty. Amnesty. All of these start with A, so you can go ahead and write A's and all the rest of the blanks. Amnesty. It's this idea of forgiveness. Forgiveness. And I want to spend a moment on this one with you because it is so vital to marriage. It is so vital to marriage. I heard one guy say at one time that he has a beef stew relationship with his wife. I beef and she stews. Consistent fighting in marriage will ruin it quicker than anything else. I want to point you to some scripture. Maybe you've not considered this in the context of marriage, but Matthew chapter 5. You have heard that it was said to the people long ago, you shall not murder, and anyone who murders will be subject to judgment. Pastor Tim, what does that have to do with marriage? Stick with me. Stick with me. Hang in there. But I tell you that anyone who is angry with a brother or sister will be subject to judgment. Anyone who says to a brother or sister, Raka, I don't even know what that means, but it's a 4-letter word, Raka, is answerable to the court. And anyone who says, you fool, will be in danger of the fire of hell. The fire of hell. I wonder if in this context it couldn't be speaking about a living hell. That if your anger has been unresolved, if these little foxes have been allowed into your marriage and they have built up over time, that you don't find yourself over time living in hell. Surely you know people like this, but maybe it describes where you find yourself at today. In the beginning it's Raka. In the beginning it's you fool. But then it grows and it becomes a living hell. It continues, therefore, if you are offering your gift at the altar, and there remember that your brother or sister has something against you, leave your gift there in front of the altar. First go and be reconciled to them, then come and offer your gift. Settle matters quickly with your adversary who is taking you to court. Because listen, at church, we don't do a very good job of letting people on the inside, do we? I mean, at church, we come and we offer our worship. And we sing songs like, oh, how he loves us. Maybe we raise our hands and we sing and we say, oh, how he loves us. His grace is an ocean. Oh, how he loves us, but not my husband. His grace is an ocean for me, but not for my wife. Listen, it's possible to do something on the outside that contradicts what's happening on the inside. If you are angry with your wife, if you are angry with your husband, this verse here tells us, go, be reconciled to them first, and then come and praise me. Then come and give me your sacrifice. Then come to the altar. Don't get it in reverse. And listen, far too many of us, whether it's a marriage relationship or it's a friendship or it's a family member, we get this one wrong all the time, every Sunday. It says go and take care of those things first. Go and do that first. I want the inside to match what's happening on the outside. And listen, it uses the word adversary here. And you know, when I first read this, I was like, well, man, that's kind of a change in person, right? First it was brother or sister, but now it's adversary. But I wonder, if you'll allow me, I wonder if it's not that this is a progression. And in the beginning, in verse 21, it was brother or sister, but now it's gone on so far that they are your adversary. Could it be? Could it be that unresolved conflict in your marriage can lead you from being brother and sister to being adversary? I see it all the time. Do it while you're still together on the way, or your adversary may hand you over to the judge, and the judge may hand you over to the officer, and you may be thrown into prison. Allow me one more analogy here. Unresolved conflict and anger in your marriage, it can feel like a prison. And it's a prison that if you don't allow forgiveness to come into your life, that can keep you locked up for a lifetime. Unforgiveness, unsolved anger, unresolved conflict, it can be a prison in your life. It can be a living hell. And truly, I tell you, it continues, you will not get out until you have paid the last penny. In other words, forgive. Forgive all the way. Resolve the anger, resolve the conflict. Do it to the fullest extent. Because listen, the closer the relationship, the greater the opportunity. The greater the opportunity for intimacy, but the closer the relationship, the greater the opportunity for offense. That's why can't nobody hurt you like those that love you hurt you. So we need to forgive. We need to forgive, especially when it's our spouse, the one that we love, the one that we're committed to for a lifetime. And just as easy as it is to offend the other, it is equally difficult to forgive the other, isn't it? But forgiveness, it means something. It means that we make 4 basic decisions. This is taken from a great book called The Peacemakers. I encourage you to read it. But forgiveness, it's a decision to make 4 promises. I want to share them with you. I don't think they're in your outline. But they're this. Here's the first one. I will not think about this incident. Forgiveness means you will commit to say, I will not think about this incident. Secondly, I will not bring up this incident again or use it against you. This is what forgiveness means. Here's the third. It means I will not talk to others about this incident. And then the last one, I will not allow this incident to stand between us or hinder our personal relationship. This is a model for friendships, but it's definitely a model for marriage. And sometimes we choose to take the step of forgiveness, but we hold some of these things back, don't we? We feel entitled to continue to bring it up. We feel entitled to bring it up with our friends and lament about what he did or what she did. But true forgiveness, authentic forgiveness, goes this far. It goes this far. And if you're unwilling to go this far, then you will pay every last penny. By making and keeping these promises, this book tells us, you tear down the walls that stand between you and your offender. You promise not to dwell on or brood over the problem, nor to punish by holding the person at a distance. You clear the way for your relationship to develop unhindered by memories of past wrong. This is exactly what God does for us, and it is what He commands us to do for others. The Peacemaker. If you need to read more about that, pick up that book. Unforgiveness is one of the most destructive forces on earth. And it always causes much more damage to the one that refuses to forgive than the other person. You're caught in prison, and you're the one that holds the key. In marriage, listen, it's a great opportunity to practice forgiveness, isn't it? It's a great opportunity for us to practice forgiveness. I need forgiveness from my wife a lot. For some of us, it's an everyday practice of forgiveness. But I'm so thankful that I have a wife that forgives me often. Colossians 3:13, make allowances for each other's faults and forgive anyone who offends you. Remember, the Lord forgave you, so you must forgive others. Forgive anyone who offends you. You must forgive others. It's not an option. Forgiveness, it's who we are as Christians, and it's who we ought to be in our marriages. Here's number 5, appreciation. Appreciation. We should appreciate our spouses. Therefore, 1 Thessalonians 5:11, therefore encourage one another and build each other up, just as in fact you are doing. Listen, when something appreciates in value, what happens? Or when something appreciates, it goes up in value, doesn't it? But when something depreciates, it goes down in value, whether it's real estate or stocks or whatever it might be. And listen, you have the power in your words to help your spouse feel valued and valuable. With just your word of encouragement, you can help her or him to walk a little taller, to feel more secure in who they are, to feel confident in what they're doing, just in your words. Gary Smalley said this truth a number of years ago. We tend to honor those that we don't know and dishonor those that we know best. Can you let that one sink in for a moment? We tend to honor those that we don't know and dishonor those that we know best. One study showed that 90% of people in jail, that they remember a time distinctly that their mom or dad told them how bad they were and that they would one day end up in jail. 90% remember that moment. That's not by chance. That points to the power of our words. The way you speak to your children as a parent, to a large degree will determine their sense of value as an adult. Your words will shape who they see themselves to be. Your words do that. And the same is true with your spouse. Your words have tremendous, tremendous value and power over how your spouse sees themselves. So use them wisely. And just as your words have the power to lift up and encourage, your words also have the power to tear down and destroy. Far too many of us know this, I would bet. It's called knowing the right button to push, isn't it? It's how we know what words to use when we're in the heat of the argument. It's how knowing exactly the right topic to bring up to just set your wife off or to set your husband off. And we use words in marriage oftentimes to inflict the most dangerous harm ever. We use our words to tear down our wives and our husbands, our kids, our families. But listen, when I feel the most love from my wife, when Consuelo is showing me the most love, it's when she tells me I'm a great dad. It's when she tells me I'm a great husband. Those things lift me up. When she tells me that she notices the little things I do for others. When she notices and she tells me about how she sees that I'm working so hard to provide for my family. Those things lift me up. It makes me inflate. It makes me swell. It makes me walk proud when she loves me like that. And you may say, well, Pastor, now, we don't want anybody to get overinflated. Here's the truth. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. There's enough out there on the other side of this wall that tells us that we're not good enough. The voices in our own heads tell us that we don't do enough, that we aren't enough, that we don't have what it takes. We don't have to worry about getting overinflated, do we? We don't have to worry about that. It's not going to happen. You're never going to overinflate your spouse. Use your words liberally. Lift them up. Build them up. Encourage them. Find out that thing that makes them walk a little taller and tell them that you notice. Appreciate them. Fill him up with your words. Fill her up with your words. Because listen, strong marriages, they have the ability to affirm one another, to reward one another, and to express appreciation to one another. The newlyweds, they just came back from their honeymoon, and the wife, she's excited to prepare their first meal as husband and wife, and she's so excited. She tells him, she said, I made for us Swedish meatballs and apple pie. And he's like, that's great. And he sits down at the dinner table and he says, okay, which one is this? Don't do that. Don't do that. There's some pre-marrieds in here. Don't do that, guys. You eat it. Just eat it. It's all right. Appreciation. It gives marriage vitality. Appreciation gives marriage life. So go ahead and tell her, honey, you've got the body of Beyonce and the soul of Mother Teresa. If you use that, don't get those backwards. It would not be good. It would be good. Here's number 6. Worship team, go ahead and come back up. Here's number 6. It's affection. It's affection. Every marriage, in order to be successful, it needs affection, doesn't it? And the ladies will say amen. Romans 16:16. Greet one another with a holy kiss. Proverbs 5:19, this is the Bible. A loving doe, a graceful deer. May her breast satisfy you always. May you ever be intoxicated with her love. I didn't know that was in the Bible. And just as food and nourishment is to physical health, touching and affection is to emotional health. Non-sexual physical touch. And guys, can I just say that we tend to be horrible at this one? I'll admit that I'm horrible at this one. I'm working at it. I try to do it better. But it's the area of these 6 I'm trying to work on the most. We're good at other types of physical touch, guys. You know, the sexual kind. But this non-sexual physical touch, it is important. And it takes work from us, guys. And listen, it is supremely important to the ladies. Ladies need this. Do you remember how romantic and thoughtful you were back in those dating days? The hugs and kisses, even if it wasn't time for sex. Holding hands in public. Now you're lucky if you even walk next to each other or sit next to each other. And ladies, you're not off the hook here either. Affection goes both ways. His idea of affection, it may not be the same as yours. In fact, it's probably not. But he needs it. He needs it. And for men, I call it the prelude. The prelude. You know, the part that comes before the other part. Pastor, this is church. We don't talk about these things. He needs it too. And ladies, do you want to know how to do this for your husband? Do you want to know the secret? Lean in, lean in, lean in. I'll tell you the secret. Ask him. Just ask him. What is it that I can do for you to show you affection? Because listen, we don't talk about this enough in marriage. We don't talk about it enough in the church, but we definitely don't talk about it enough in marriage. Sex is an act. Affection is an act, but I believe it starts as a conversation. Because you can find all kinds of misinformation about this topic, but why don't you approach it in an informed way? And that's between the two of you. What I could prescribe for you is probably not what will work for you. So the two of you need to talk about it. As awkward as that may be, which goes beyond all understanding, but I get it, it's awkward. You need to talk about it. And not just one time. Talk about it. You know, one of the things that Consuelo and I try to do on Sunday mornings to show each other affection is during the greeting time. Maybe you've noticed this. We turn to each other and we kiss. I think every Sunday. We've been doing this for years. I'm sure we probably missed one here and there. But we turn to one another and we kiss. Been doing it for years. It's my way to show her affection. Now, the next person we turn to usually says, "Whoa, are you going to kiss me?" Find out what that physical touch, non-sexual physical touch is for your wife, guys. And ladies, find out what that prelude looks like. Have a conversation about it. Take it further. Go away. Find yourself on a date night and talk about these things. Just talk about them. Because I guarantee if you will, it will all get better. So, there it is, the 6 things. The 6 things that lead us to hopefully stronger marriages, definitely a foundation for a strong marriage. Acceptance, attention, adjustment, amnesty, appreciation, and affection. And I couldn't think of a great way to transition this, but I want you to think about this. I want you to think about those 6 things. And I want you to take this paper, if you're married, I want you to take this paper and discuss it over lunch, discuss it tonight with your spouse, and just go through each one. And maybe this first time you just want to say, I'm going to rate myself and share it with my spouse, how I think I'm doing on each of these. And listen, if your spouse chooses to do that, honor it. If your husband ranks himself a 10 in affection, just say, all right, babe. But honor that. Take that list. Rate yourself first. Maybe if you're really daring and you have a really strong marriage, don't start any fights. But maybe you want to take turns rating each other. Because I guarantee that will open the door for some conversation. But whatever the conversation is, make sure it's peppered with grace. Because none of us are perfect. There's not one of those 6 that I would ever rank myself as a 10. I know I've got improvement to make in all of those areas. And I'd imagine the same's for you too. But the greatest avenue for success in marriage I found is authentic, real communication. Just talking to each other. Because when you don't connect regularly, when you're not talking regularly, you can begin to imagine and make up stories about one another that are just way off base. And so discuss those lists, however that looks to you and your spouse. And then find a date night, this week if possible. Consuelo and I, we got a hotel for tomorrow night. We're going out of town, and we're looking forward to that. That's our date night. Find one. It doesn't have to be that. Maybe it's just dinner. Maybe it's just after the kids go to bed. You just want to turn on some Netflix and make it a date night. Whatever it is, find some time where it's just the two of you and talk. Just connect. Because that covers over everything else. Did you get it? You get it? Go ahead and bow your heads and close your eyes if you would, please. Just want to invite you to kind of focus in on one point that I talked about today. And that's the one of amnesty or forgiveness. There are people here right now that you would say, man, I'm holding on to that hurt. I've allowed those small foxes to come in, and I've been angry at my spouse or my friend or my family member, my neighbor for far too long. I've held on to that hurt. I've held on to that pain, and I feel like I am in a living hell. I feel like I am in that prison with the door locked, and I've tried to get out, but I just can't do it. And the truth is that sometimes the forgiveness that you extend comes from not from your own energy and effort, but it comes through God's Spirit inside of you. Sometimes we have to act, and then the feelings will follow. But if that's you right now, I want to invite you just to lift up a prayer. Just to pray to God that you will find in yourself the resolve to forgive, the words of forgiveness to use, that you will see clearly what it is you need to do in order to forgive. Because Jesus is our ultimate example of forgiveness. And so I guarantee He has the answer for the relationship you're thinking of right now. He's got it. And I just want to ask is, if there's someone here, maybe you say, I get all of that, but I've never really taken the step to accept Jesus as Savior. I've never taken that step to say yes to Jesus in my own life, and so I'm beginning to see maybe that forgiveness doesn't come easily for me because I've not been forgiven. And so if that's you in the room today, and you want to take that step, and you want to receive Christ and say yes to Jesus, if you'll just lift up your hand. I'll say, I see your hand. You can put it right back down. But if you want to take that step this morning, just lift your hand right now. I'm not going to make you get out of your seat or anything. I'll just say, I see your hand. You can put it right back down. Anybody across the room say, yes, that's the step I want to take this morning. Anybody at all? All right, will you go ahead and stand to your feet with me this morning? And I'm going to invite our prayer teams to go ahead and come forward. These are teams of people that want to pray with you. And so we do this most Sundays. And so if you have a prayer request of any kind, it can be about anything. It can be about what I talked about this morning. Maybe you have a marriage that you need prayer for. Maybe it's somebody you know that they need prayer for their marriage, or maybe it's a forgiveness issue for you that you just can't find it in yourself to forgive. Whatever it might be, maybe it's a financial need, maybe it's you need healing of some sort. Step forward, come out of where you're at now, find a couple and receive prayer this morning. For everybody else, we're gonna begin to worship God together, but don't delay. Come now and receive prayer.